because tonight we got a 2-4, figuratively and literally, because we're going to be talking about some different projects, some different things, and we're going to talk with a man who, first of all, needs no further introduction, who first time he came on here on Sportswire Radio 2 years ago, around 2 years ago this time, he talked about a journey which led him to Dambe and led him to the African Warriors Fighting Championship, became the first person outside of Africa to have competed in Dambe, and now we've seen him in another project we've been talking about here on and off through the past several weeks on Sportswire Radio. And he might even talk about another project. And our guest right below, who is not going to knock me out here. He might have done that in a previous life, but now he's going to talk about a project he's been working on with Mr. Leyland. We've kind of talked a little bit about it. It's armored MMA and also maybe some other things coming up. And certainly this will be one, let's just say, keep the popcorn and the drink ready, because we're going to have plenty of fireworks here, because we're starting things early, depending on where you are, side of the coin, in prime time on the brightest lights, the biggest stage, the only platform where all sports matters and all wrestling matters. And after all, I've got even a surprise for our guest, Mr. Luke Leyland, because Mr. Luke Leyland, of course, is a man that holds us near and dear to our hearts on Sportswire Radio, because he's got the most viewed interview on all of our YouTube videos in history. So if you're watching it, he's the man you see on the welcome page, 1,400 plus views and counting. He's the man that also led us to that magical moment with Mr. Dean Allmark, the legendary Dean Allmark. He'll most certainly be a topic, I'm sure, in a little while. And David Harte ain't too bad in his own right. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get this show on the road. They've been waiting for the intro. I know, Luke, you've done a few podcasts recently, but I ain't going to ask you about what you had for breakfast. I ain't going to ask you about what kind of music you listen to. I ain't going to ask you about your day job. I ain't going to ask you about the family. I'm going to go straight to the point, because this is the platform that, after all, you might need some advice from these guys that had the magical moments with us. That is the man beast, the war machine Rhino, and this guy Savio Vega, who apparently was responsible for the career of Stone Cold Steve Austin. And Mr. Hart, you might have directed some videos that we'll talk about, but I'm going to give you an introduction that we're not going to be saying cut for. We're going to certainly get to it right now on Sportswire Radio, the number one global radio station. Let's get to it. So with wait for it, further ado here on the Sports Report. Number one, global sports show. A man that went from the boxing ring to the director's chair. His name is, simply put, David Harte. And a man that needs no further introduction. A man whose film, The Dan Battore Kudawa, was a part of several film festivals, including AFRIF in Toronto. He's a Sportswire Radio Hall of Famer with the most viewed video of any Sportswire radios on YouTube. He's trained, and he'll certainly need some training again, from the legendary Dean Allmark. His name is, simply put, fellas, how are we doing?
Hello, Mr. Bryce, and thank you for letting me come back home to the number one global radio station. Thank you.
You know, I listened. There was one you did on the African Warriors Fighting Championship, which was very good, by the way. I think you did it right after me last year. That one I listened to. That was really good. The one you did yesterday, I thought, was I watching like a UK comedy skit, or was I really watching you talk about what you're doing? I mean, no disrespect. It was a fun watch, but yeah, welcome home. And It's great to be back with you. And David, nice to see you from the director's chair, and nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Very hyped intro.
Yeah, I try to, you know what? I know Luke's done a bunch of these podcasts. I listen to them, and I know Luke's certainly a name that's in demand now. You've, been a part of some award-winning film festivals. You've got a lot we're going to talk about here in a short amount of time, but I try to do things differently than the average podcaster. I just try to, that's why you'll come back. That's why maybe Rhino and Savio Vega did want to be on here. I don't know why they did, but, I think I know why they did, but they enjoyed it. But I hope you guys enjoy it, if not more. And let's get right to it here, because I know you guys are busy, man. You've got interviews left and right. You've got projects you're working on, probably figuratively and literally. And for those that are listening and watching here in prime time on the brightest lights, the biggest stage, the only platform where all sports matters and all wrestling matters here, Sportzwire Radio, with over 1,400 plus subscribers. And Luke Leyland most certainly helped us get there. And David Harte, you will help us get to the next 1,400. I'm going to go with you, David, first, and talk about a project you've been working on with Luke, which we've been plugging quite a bit on YouTube, and set the tables for us here, first of all, on this project called Armored MMA that you guys have been working on, and what's that been like working with Mr. Leyland?
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, basically what happened was I wasn't long finished from film school, and friend hit me up, basically said, check what this guy is asking for on Facebook. So I've gone on. Not long before that, I did a boxing documentary as well. So I was looking for my next documentary to start, and I came across Luke's post asking about he needed a camera op or somebody who could direct basically his next documentary. And when I started messaging him, and he messaged me back saying he was doing night MMA, I thought he'd lost the plot, to be honest.
You know what? We showed it here. I showed the link here, and it was like, what? What are you doing again? I mean, you have a death wish?
Yeah, I never heard of it before, but obviously I love MMA.
Yeah,
I love Game of Thrones. I was like, it's perfect combo.
This guy's literally throwing himself into it. I mean, this guy Luke Leyland. I mean, I thought I knew you. I guess not.
No. It's it's great.
What's it like working with him when you're doing these documentaries? I'm going to put the YouTube link up here in a minute, and I'll let Luke talk about it here formally because he hasn't been here in over a year. But what's it like working with Luke as a person so far?
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, like, he obviously, he's willing to get in, get his, get in fighting, sparring. He's okay doing any interviews because of his previous documentary. And like, we've been talking about doing all other sports, and there's not one sport I've mentioned where he's been like, no, I'm not doing that. Everything's been like, yeah, I'm hands on. I'll fight a kangaroo. I'm not bothered. So I'm like, it's been great, to be honest, man.
You know what it reminds me? I said this last night when I formally introduced Luke of coming back onto Sportswire. There was a show here in America called Undercover Bosses, and bosses would go and they would do jobs that their employees would do, and they would kind of get a sense of what their employees were going through on a day-in-and-day basis. Now, it's not quite exactly the same thing, but it is kind of similar because what Luke has done, obviously Dambe, Armored MMA, the next project, he's actually going and training and learning and going into that. So he's even more than a stunt man. I mean, it's really fascinating what Luke is doing at this stage of his life, and you're doing a great job documenting. I'm going to put that YouTube link up in a minute so people can watch some of it. And Luke, long time no speak, stranger. It's been over a year. It was January 24th was your last appearance on the platform, and it's been a year. A lot has changed. You've been a part of film festivals. You get asked left and right to do podcasts, and welcome home. And talk to me about this latest project, Forged in Stone. 2 episodes are out, Armored MMA, and what's that been like diving into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Bryce. It's great to be here. It's been a while now since we've spoke. Since I've come back, it's been non-stop with media things. But as David was saying before, I was looking for someone to record the next project, which was Forged in Stone, and I'd seen the boxing documentary that David done, and I had a couple of people in mind that I wanted to work with. But as soon as I seen David's work, I thought, if I can get this guy on side, then we're going to create some magic. With my vision of what I wanted to do and David's vision of how to create it. I thought we can do something very special here. So I spoke to David. He was up for it, and then the rest, we kind of learned together. We both went into the gym. I went into the gym in the first week and got my behind absolutely kicked. And David actually came over. I don't know if you remember this, but he actually came over and said, "Oh, it's great that you're getting your ass kicked because it looks good." And I said, "This is not planned."
Don't feel too bad, Luke. There's plenty of people that would like to kick my butt too here on Sportswire. So don't feel too bad.
But yeah, it was it's a great experience, and he was behind the idea of it as well. Like I said, even if I do, I get a beating, or if I throw up, or if I get injured, I want that recording because it's real, and that's one thing I'm a huge fan of, just documenting the realism of it. I'm not going to be great at all sports, and I wanted that like in the documentary to show that I am human, and this is what these sports are like behind the scenes.
What's this been like versus a few times I had you on, the last two, because I've had you on 3 times before, where we specifically talked about the African Warriors Fighting Championship and going into competing in Dambe. What's the difference in going into armored MMA versus your training for Dambe?
Well, with Dambe, it's very spiritual. It's very, very spiritual. So there's a lot of belief that goes on in and around Dambe, and the culture is much different as well. The lads over in northern Nigeria, they're literally fighting for money, for food and things like that. So it's almost a life and death situation there in some situations. So in armored MMA, although there's not really a belief or any sort of religious thing around it, I can guarantee you they fight just as hard and just as passionately. Being in that cage and looking across the ring at someone who was a lot wider than me and someone who was a lot taller than me was a different experience. But given the, competing in Dambe in Nigeria did give me the confidence to come back and just keep going and have that belief in myself, to be honest.
And what's it like putting on the gear? I think that's the most fascinating thing to me. What is it like putting on
Yeah.
all of that gear? I mean, it's not like anything else you've done. In Dambe, you got nothing on practically in shorts. The next thing we'll talk about, there ain't really much to that either. But this, it's almost like you're putting on an armored hazmat suit, figuratively and literally.
Yeah, it was exactly like that, to be honest. So one of the things that we really wanted to catch with these documentaries is the training that goes into these combat sports. And obviously, likes of armored MMA, it was very important to catch the training and the preparation in that. So getting in there, I was wondering what it was going to be like. And Daniel, who he owns the armored MMA school, he actually started putting the greaves and all the armor on one episode. And every single part that you hear me say, every single part that he put on, it started to get heavier and heavier. And then eventually he put the helmet on. And the helmet, I knew it was going to be quite a challenge because I've seen loads of documentaries on it. And people were saying when you put the helmet on, it can actually induce a panic attack sometimes because it's not
Mm.
just a heavy helmet. It's actually a heavy helmet that's going on and then it's getting strapped to your other armor that's strapped to your body. So if you wanted to take that helmet off, you can't take it off straight away. It's going to take a fair good few seconds, maybe up to 30 seconds to get it off. So that was quite panicking. But I knew the biggest part of this was going to be not only the physical training as well, obviously, but it was going to be mental. And to really control the mental side of it, because not only just training in the helmet was worse enough and hard enough, but being in front of obviously all them people and then in a cage and then knowing that you're going to do battle with someone that looks like, as you can see there across the cage, that
It's
is
a big
also
guy.
plays a lot with your mind. Yeah, he was huge. But that also plays with your mind, so that's where I really have to focus on my mental strength.
Yeah, because I mean, when we were talking about you with Dombe, we were getting up early in the morning, dieting changed, you lost weight, you were really getting into a totally different mindset. But this here, you're out there, you can't see anything when you're fighting. It's kind of like, and you
Yeah,
got a size disadvantage here, and it's just totally
yeah,
fascinating to see this. I mean, most people wouldn't even they wouldn't even attempt this and such. I mean, you really are, the definition of the undercover bosses of athletic competition. I mean, I don't know if you intended for
Well,
that, Luke, but you are.
yeah, well, to be fair, like with these documentaries, I wanted to find something. I think I don't know if I mentioned it on one of the previous podcasts, but
Yeah.
around where we're from, everyone does boxing, everyone does MMA. So I was looking for sports that are up and coming and getting
You
very
did. You did
popular.
say that you were looking for things that you thought people might, because of what you're doing, pay attention to more. They are kind of under the radar type of sports. We spoke about this with
Yeah,
Dambe and what you've done since. I mean, African Warriors Fighting Championship, I feel like it's blown up in social media, and you've done that. And this is, probably in the same vein. You're going for things that wouldn't necessarily be on my bingo card. But then when I think about it, I go, you know what? Yeah, that's a really fascinating thing. And I'm curious for you, David, in directing a project like this and seeing what Luke is going through. How do you showcase that for the viewer? What do you do as a director to show the journey in only X amount of time? Because these aren't long videos. So how do you get this all in and showcase Luke and what he's going through?
It's like when Luke said before about him getting when he really did get his ass kicked, by the way, the first. And I just had to show absolutely everything. I just filmed everything, and I made sure immediate interviews was important. So as soon as he was out of breath, he'd had his ass handed to him, drag him into the next room, get his thoughts. And I feel with that sport as well, it's quite easy to capture how hard the training is because it is so hard. It is ruthless, the training.
Oh my goodness. I mean, to do what those guys do, I mean, it's just on a whole nother level. Putting on that suit, being able to compete with using the object itself, and then going out there and you're not seeing anything. I mean, that's just totally. I mean, I got all the respect. I got all the respect in the world for all athletes because we get them all on here. I just had on a women's football team, but what they do, Luke, and what you've showcased with Dambe, obviously with the Dan Battore Kudawa film, and then now with this with David. I mean, this is just. I mean, most people would die just putting the suit on. You even said it yourself, practically.
yeah, it was a different experience. But the training that went into it, I knew I couldn't lose much weight because I had to carry the armor. But it was more about trying to keep my gas tank like fit and healthy. So I was really concentrating on in being in the gym, but wearing a lot of clothes on me times away from the gym in Rochdale where we were training. In my own personal time, I was concentrating on throwing a lot of clothes on and getting on the assault bike and then really trying to get my fitness up because I knew that was going to be a huge factor in this game.
For sure. And I do want to put some plugs out there. First of all, YouTube, you can watch the Forged in Stone videos for Armored MMA that David and Luke have been working on. Also, Instagram, please give a follow to Luke. I will put also David's up in a minute. So please, if you can, go give a follow to them. And I do have to bring up this person because they're here. David, if you were looking for somebody else to do a project with, I would recommend the one and only Mr. Tribal Cheese. He's a big influencer on YouTube. He's got like almost 4,000 subscribers, 11,000 followers on TikTok, and he's had a journey which will probably segue into the next project. And he's a man that I would certainly say keep an eye on. I'll definitely connect you with him. He would be a guy that I'm telling you, you would win like an Oscar with. But I'll leave that at that. But okay, so what are the goals here with this project, David? Obviously, you've done a lot of work with Luke. What's the goal here with what you've done with Forged in Stone?
I think it was just at first it was just capturing this documentary of just Luke's journey. Mm-hmm. But I think once me and Luke started getting more involved with the sport, we were like, we need to get the sport out there. We need to put some legs on it and let people see, how great it is, how hard the training is. And these people are not getting paid. They're going in just for the love of it. We just want to show how great the sport is because I believe, in a couple of years it could be quite big.
Yeah, you know what? I'll give you an example. Pickleball has become a really big thing in the last like 5 or 6 years. when you first would have thought pickleball, I would have thought, okay, somebody's got a pickle jar, right? But now pickleball, I mean, I see it on like ESPN here in America. I mean, I see it on TSN in Canada. I mean, I see pickleball like here in New York. I have friends that go, oh, you play pickleball? And I'm like, no, but I've watched it. It's really fascinating. And even one of my buddies, was in politics, and I know pickleball was like a big deal, and in like funding a pickleball court. I mean, so like that's a really big deal, and how far that sport's come. And I think that armored MMA could be one of those. And for you, Luke, is it the same goal? And what's the goal with this project that you just worked on with David?
Yeah, 100%. It's the same, but it's also I want to be able to show people that these sports aren't only out there, but what it takes to go through to be able to compete in these sports, and if we can, almost like advertise for these
Right.
sports. I know over in actually in the States, it's called AMMA. I think that's Armored Mixed Martial Arts, and it is quite big over in the States at the moment.
Fascinating. Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. And we're certainly excited to talk about it. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice figuratively and literally where all sports matters and all wrestling matters. If you're here, give us a sub. We're also here on Twitch. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We're on another bunch of places if you want to follow what we're doing content-wise. But David has an Instagram page. If you'd like to get in touch with him, that's his information. We're here with David Harte and Luke Leyland. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. David, I want to ask you this question, and I know you've fought before, so it's not like you're just some guy. Sometimes you see sports documentaries, and people direct them, and they know nothing about sports. They have no coordination. They have no background in it. But for you as a fighter, does that give you an appreciation to work on these projects and kind of understand, in a sense, what some of these people are going through? I mean, what's
Yeah,
your thoughts on that? Because I think it's really fascinating, your background versus the average director who you think of as just some, short guy that just spent all their life in film and did drama class. Whereas, you like me, like, I was an athlete. I had a background in the street, so it's like, I think with guys like you, especially though, you can kind of relate to what some of these fighters are going through. So how does that boxing background help you in directing these films and such?
yeah, with boxing and just life in general. Like I started film late, so 30 years old, I started making films. And I think when I went to film school, the big thing I had about me is that I'd lived a life, whereas all these kids were just like, "Oh, I just want to make the next Marvel film." Where I'm like, I want to put the things I've seen in film, and whether that be with a genre around it like horror or sci-fi, still add life to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I've come to documentaries, like the first documentary I did was a boxing documentary. It was only a year after I had like a white collar fight. And my big thing about it was let's show like the mental side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like the mental side of boxing when you have a 9 to 5, that's not just your life.
Yeah.
And then we've gone into this documentary, and I've tried to, every question I've asked is asking Luke, how hard was it? It's not none of this glorious watching him on a treadmill. No, oh, I'm doing so great. I've ate my eggs this morning. I feel fantastic. Like everything's about the mental side.
Yeah, because it's intense to go from, you're going into something that you've never done before. Even I know both you guys are athletes. We're going to talk about the next project in a minute, but you can't fake just going into something like these are intense sports. Some people could go into a playground and shoot a basketball. All right, yeah, you know what? If I do it enough times, I shoot enough free throws, yeah, maybe I'll make them. If I go out there on a soccer or a football field around the world, if I kick the ball enough times, yeah, I could probably put it in the net. But this is totally different what you're doing here. You Luke with Dambe, and now this with Armored MMA. You can't just walk in there. I heard the Tribal Cheese last night on his Facebook and Instagram talk about his own fight background. But this is like times 10. I mean, you can't just go in there and you can't fake it. You got to go out there and it's going to hurt. It's going to more than hurt because of just the intensity and what these sports are. It's really fascinating what you both are doing here.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. To be just on a little story about that, when we were putting the armor on, I actually spoke to the promoter, and said, "Does the armor go any lighter?" And he said, "There's actually slightly lighter armor that you can put on." But he said the lighter that the armor is, the more damage that you're going to receive. The heavier, the more protected. But obviously, what comes with that is then your gas tank. Obviously, your stamina is going to be more tested. So I went for the lightest armor possible. And he did say, there's a big chance that you could get like really hurted if you do get hit in the right places. And I was like, yeah, I understand. But I just thought, well, as long as it's on camera, and then we can, just show the journey, because that's what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to just show each and every step of the journey, and whatever happens, happens.
Well, it's certainly a lot of things are happening, and I continue to promote it. David has a YouTube channel and an Instagram channel. If you'd like to get in touch, I have my buddy Ed Pizzo here from Dooley, and maybe he'll connect. I'll connect Ed to both you guys. I know the Tribal Cheese is here. I want to say hello to him. Casey Jack Bradley is in the house. Thank you, Casey, for tuning in. And also Zilla is in the house. Can never forget about Zilla. Zilla is the #1 here on Sportswire Radio. But I know you guys are busy men, but we're not done. We're not done with projects. I just saw Forged in Stone. We showed the last episode for the audience, but apparently, from my understanding, unless maybe I need to get my ears checked or I'm reading things differently, you guys got another project coming up, and maybe you want to fill us in a little bit on it, or what?
Would you like me to
Absolutely.
start?
Yeah, go, David.
You
go ahead, mate.
right here on who's going to introduce it. If you want, because or a few days ago on Sportswire, we had these two wrestlers, Joe Starr and Tyson Spade. They were literally going to kill each other on here. One guy had a knife in his hand, the other guy was running to his hand. Then we had this guy Anthony Steele on Sunday, who all of a sudden decided to drop in and throw out all these allegations on one wrestler, El Drago. Then yesterday we had Dante O'Cara, and he was interrupted by a Cajun Cruiser and then a goat of BYW Comatose. So it wouldn't shock me if you guys wanted to fight on here, especially after the last few shows on Sportswire. So who knows?
This is definitely the place to do it, if anywhere.
Yeah, it's the place. It's the place. Yeah.
Well, if David, if you want to start, mate, I can jump in.
Yeah. Well, basically, halfway through Forged in Stone, Luke decided to tell me he used to be a wrestler.
I guess we didn't watch the interview here where we talked about his background quite a bit, and
Yeah, I didn't know, and then I just was like, well, dude, I'm like one of the biggest wrestling fans. Like me, my kids, we watch wrestling weekly. It's religious, and
wow.
So I was like, funny story, like I said before, about like he wanted to do any kind of sport, fight a kangaroo, whatever. I just kept bringing it back. I was like, dude, go back to wrestling. Let me make a documentary or something about wrestling. So basically, we're doing a documentary now about British wrestling, not just as Luke. As well.
I think I've been covering for a long time on here. But 4 years I've been covering British wrestling.
Yeah,
right
we've got a couple of questions to ask basically. So it's like Luke we're gonna have his return into wrestling. We need the question is, what's the state of British wrestling?
The Tribal Cheese and I spoke about that last week on the show, and it wasn't the greatest of answers. Let's just put it that way.
Well, from our perspective, it's like we're in a bit of a boom at the minute. It's doing well, but we're gonna then look into the history of like Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks.
Yes.
So and we're going for a feature as well. So
that's cool. Yeah, I mean, World of Sport. I think right now, obviously Osprey and AEW is a big deal. I think we just had RPD on here, RP Davis, who's considered to be maybe the top or one of the top independent British wrestlers, wrestled Anthony Ogogo, another guy that's a name. And obviously Luke, a man that trained you, who's certainly considered to be one of the very greatest British wrestlers and certainly independent wrestlers of all time. A man who's come on here twice. I still don't know why he did. Mr. Dean Allmark. And I'm sure he'll have a thing or two about this, Luke. So, I mean, welcome back to the ring, I suppose. And what's on earth? And the irony of a stop sign in the background there, I believe. The irony of that, Luke. Are you trying to stop yourself from returning to the ring, or is that just irony?
No, that's 100% irony. To be honest, when I'm in the middle of a documentary, I always think, okay, what is next? What is next? And David did keep saying to me, "Oh, we should do a wrestling documentary," and I was like, yeah. And I always had it kind of in the back of my mind, but on the forefront of my mind, I had what's the next combat that I'm going to be involved in. And then David said, "Look, I really do think we should like making a return back to the ring, and we can get the situation of British professional wrestling in, and the history of it. And then I started thinking, and some of the best times of my life was when I was a lot younger around wrestling.
Yeah.
I've got like so many amazing memories, as
We
you
spoke
know,
about
a
it
lot of
here
you.
the first time you were here. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. So I thought, you know what, like if anything, I kind of owe it to me younger self. I thought, let's get back involved. Let's try and do the best documentary that we can do. Get the preparation in for it, and come back in the ring and see if I'm up to a level of today's British professional wrestlers.
How do you feel in doing that? How have you felt in going back in the ring? Because it's been over a decade. It's been over a decade
Yeah.
since you've been out there. So how has that transition been so far?
Well, I am back in the gym now. I am in Claw Wrestling School, which
Oh, well,
is located
obviously,
in
Dean. Yep.
Liverpool,
I
in
would
in
think. I
Croxford.
would think you'd be going back to Dean. Good idea.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So when first of all going back in, a few little things came to me straight away, almost like I'd never lost them.
Hmm.
But then there was other things that I really needed to work on. Weirdly enough, it was my balance in the ring. Just when I started doing a couple of rolls, my balance was completely off, and I thought, wow, that's something that I didn't expect to be off. And then when I started taking a couple of bumps, I thought, has the rings got harder over the years, or what's going on? I
We were talking
actually,
about this off the air. I mean, it's just really wood underneath the canvas mat there. It's really just wood.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I actually was. Dean said, how do you feel at the end of the first training session? And I said, yeah. So that the bumps were, a little bit tough. And he said, yeah, he said because when you left, your body would have been used to it. He said it's just about getting your body back used to bumping now. And then there was a little. I wanted to try an elbow off the second just to see how I was landing, and I tried it, and then bang, I landed. And then Dean said, "How was that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I sat down, and in my mind, I thought, "Oh my God, that was." I felt like I'd been in like honestly, a car crash. I was like, that was immense. So all it needs is a few more sessions back in the ring. It's going to be a lot of training to get myself back in there, but. The bumping wise, I think I can get my body back
But what's
back
that
back
going to
to the way
be
it
like,
was.
though? This is something you've done, though. See, this is different than Dambe, Armored MMA, because you never did that. Now, wrestling, you've been there. You've done it. You were trained by Dean. There's always that predetermined opinion of what happened the first time. You've been
Mhm.
away. People look at it and go, what are you doing here? There's going to be just all of that. So what's that going to be like with this compared to the other two projects? Because you were in the wrestling world and you had a career. I mean, so what's that going to be
Yeah.
like compared to the other two projects?
So I remember leaving. To try and get myself settled financially and everything. And for some reason, I don't do well in the normal world. I
Yeah, you
I
said
just
basically you like to challenge the norms. You've definitely done that, Luke. I will
100%.
tell you, you
So
definitely challenge the norms.
yeah, 100%. So coming back, I've literally going from combat sports to sports entertainment, and it's going to be a completely different world. And that's, if I'm not being really honest, that was really why I was kind of apprehensive wanting to go back into a wrestling documentary, because I thought, how can I make this transition because of the mindset and this, that, and the other. But as I say, when I got on my first training session, I thought, yeah, things are coming back, and I started enjoying it again. And I actually started wondering why I left. And now the fire's back there burning in me again. And I can honestly
He's
say,
got, they say with wrestling, once you get back in, they can't take you back out, and
well, do you know what? I can honestly say it's some of the moves were like I'd never left, and there is a fire burning inside of me now, and I am determined to be a better professional wrestler now on the comeback than I was back in 2010, and I'm determined to make that happen
oh my
100%.
goodness. I mean, wow. And we're here with Luke Leyland and David Hart for a little while longer. And Luke Leyland is going to certainly maybe morph back into Luke Hardy. And boy, that's going to be something or a sight. And if you want to see what the project will be like, hit the sub button for us there. Also, follow David on Instagram. Follow Luke on Instagram. My name is the Reverend Tom Price. Plus, Luke, I got something for you soon here. But, David, I was wondering then, so being a wrestling fan, now you know what Luke has done in his career and doing this. What's this project been like for you versus the other one, and just getting a chance to see the wrestling? Because you boxed, there's no question. You saw the
Mm.
boxing ring. I've had guys on here who box, but now you're seeing a ring, similar thing, but wrestling. And what's that been like directing Luke in this project versus Armored MMA?
Yeah, so we did our first little shoot last week, just getting a bit of test footage and some interviews. And like, I've done wrestling training once in my life. I was a lot younger. It was very hard.
Yeah, I think wrestling is one of the most difficult
ridiculous.
things to do. I mean, it's really
But-
my friend trained. It took him 5 years to have his first match. Like it's
yeah. And we was in there the other day, and just like the sound of the ring, them just doing front flips, and I'm just thinking like the damage you're taking off that is like we do that in sparring, do you know? But we try and stop that. But you're constantly just throwing yourself over and taking flips onto the back, and it's amazing to see. Like he looks great as well. Like, which we need to dull that down. He needs to look worse for the documentary to be better.
But you know what, though? Maybe that's an advantage for you, Luke, because you've trained in so many intense sports the last year and a half or 2 years. So going into wrestling, your body's in great shape. It's probably in better shape than it was before when you were training to go to Africa for the African Warriors Fighting Championship and what you just did through Armored MMA. So maybe that does give you a little bit of an advantage because you're not just going into it and your body's not had any at all combat. Your body's went through plenty the last year and a half, 2 years. So maybe that at least gives you a little bit of a leg up.
100%. Hopefully, I can pick up where I left off, and there's not going to be too much time between getting to where I left off. But I think having Dean in the corner as well, with his experience, I think that's going to be a huge weapon in the arsenal. Let's just say.
What advice has Dean? You know, I know we ask this every time you come on, but what advice has Dean given you this time? Because now you're coming back to the role. You know, it wasn't like before when Dean was talking to you and yeah, he was giving you advice about doing Dambe, Armored MMA, I'm sure, but now you're coming back to his world. So I don't know if he's treating you back as a student again or you're going back to being a rookie, but you know, what kind of advice is Dean giving you now?
Yeah, I'd expect nothing less. I mean, when I go into a new gym, I'd expect just to start from the bottom, and Dean's a fantastic teacher. And the advice he's given me is,
Dean, he looks like he hasn't aged. Does this man age or what?
yeah, he must be drinking some sort of special elixirs or something. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know.
But yeah, the advice it is he's just said, come back in, take your time, and then let's get the first session out of the way. The second session, let's see how you feel. And I usually jump in his car on the way to the training session because he drives past mine, and we have a little conversation about like moving forward with wrestling and things like that. And yeah, it's just having him in the corner anyway and teaching us stuff is a real confidence booster. I did have a few ideas on a few places on where to go beforehand, and when I realised Dean's still teaching, I thought there's only one place for me to go. And
how
as I
could
say,
you not go
by,
to Dean? How could you not go to him? You have that line of connection. I mean, he's the very best. I mean, you think about it's Dean and everybody else, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to be honest, when Dean continued wrestling and I went into other things, I'd lost a little bit of touch with Dean for about maybe a couple of years there, and it was strange coming back into seeing Dean again because everything I was discussing with him about my vision moving forward with documentaries or traveling across the world competing, he totally understood. And there's only a few people that I've ever spoken to about these things that really understand me drive and what it is I want to do. Everybody else just thinks I'm insane. Where likes of Dean and David and stuff, you can actually see that vision, and it does it does take a special person to see what I'm doing and to believe in it as well. So, and Dean's definitely that person.
Oh, I mean, listen, this man is royalty. He is one of the very best to have ever done it, and it was a great honor to have him on. I know you both are busy men, but I got to ask you, Luke, very quickly because we kind of talked about it in the intro, but Dan Battore Kudawa, and I think I actually got that right, won some awards. It was a part of some film festivals, and I was curious what that meant to you and all that hard work getting recognized, whether it was in Toronto or at AFRIF.
Yeah, it's it's a strange feeling because I remember the day I was sitting there and I was thinking about documentaries, and now it got awarded the best trailer in the Toronto International Film Festival, and then we were up for the best documentary in AFRIF, but then we didn't win, but we got a special mention, which is a huge deal to us.
Absolutely.
So looking at that, I think all these people that just think I was insane and just doing these I don't know, silly things, they were wrong. They were all wrong, and my vision and my feeling and view and my destiny was right, because it hasn't only done well in one documentary, but we've got so many compliments and different conversations arise now about the Forged in Stone, and it just reminds me every time I look back at these things now that I am on the right path, and this my destiny is true. It's what I'm doing now.
Absolutely. Well, you are definitely an inspiration. You are an inspiration to a lot of us here on the platform. You always get brought up here. You're always tuning in. You're always giving me good advice. And I think a lot of the people that when they tune into this later or watch a clip on Instagram, you are definitely somebody that we hold in really high regard. And you've done so much just for the community and, your hard work, highlighting people that, are doing great things. And, I think it's so similar to a lot of the people that come on here. I think about all the university athletes that have been here over the years and just they don't get paid. They go to school, have multiple jobs. They want to continue their dreams. You think about all the wrestlers now that you're back in that world and just everybody that comes on here. Nobody's really making money off this, and it's all for their blood, sweat, and tears. And you definitely fit that alongside David. But, Luke, I had a surprise for you before we get to some other things. I know you both are busy men, but I wanted you to have this. I know that you've gotten things here before, but I think it's time to recognize you once again because you've already won some awards elsewhere, but now I'm putting you back in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame for a second time as now a global influencer, because you are a global influencer. Think about it, right? Dambe, right? You were this guy that nobody knew anything about, goes all the way to Africa, competes in the African Warriors Fighting Championship, does a great job with that. Forged in Stone, Armored MMA. I mean, most people just putting the thing on would have died. You've done that. Now you might even be your most craziest project to date. You're going back to the wrestling world, the world that most people want to get out of. You're going back into it. And that to me shows that you want to really do even more as a global influencer, and you'll have this. I'll send it to you when we're off the air. And thank you for all that you do. And I'm excited to see, I think I'm excited to see this one most because I'm curious, like, who am I going to know that's in this documentary? I'm almost like in this project, I'm like, okay, am I going to have to bite my tongue on what I think about this one? Or am I going to be giving it 2 thumbs up? But no, obviously, no, it's great. I love British wrestling. We had RPD was just here. We had Andre Decker. We just had the Tribal Cheese. James Barris was here a couple weeks ago. We had a vampire. Yes, a vampire. I heard you're from Merseyside, which means you wouldn't be too far from the CCW guys. Rick Marcus was here. So Sheik El Sham was supposed to have come here. I don't know why I didn't bring him on yet, but he does want to come on here. So, great stuff. And you deserve this. So thank you for all that you do for us. And, I know you both are busy, man. I wish I could have you on here for hours both, but David, is there anything that you want to tell the audience on what we should be looking forward from this project you're working on with Luke, or anything you want to say to the audience, and maybe if they want to be a part of future documentaries with you, if you're looking for, other people, or what would you like to say to anybody out there?
Yeah, just basically just keep an eye out for this documentary that we're doing right now. Also, another thing is like, yes, I'm knowledgeable of wrestling and British wrestling, but if anybody has got any information or cool stories about wrestling that they would think could fit in the documentary, please contact us. Or
I think I know a man here.
Yeah, any other sides of wrestling, like backyard wrestling or extreme wrestling, or
well, anything. You are in the right place if you want to talk off the air about backyard wrestling.
Yeah, because basically,
I know a lot about that.
Anything that's happened in Britain wrestling now,
that I know a lot about too. I know a lot.
We might imitate a bit. So British wrestling could be pulled over here. It may be.
Yeah, I could definitely point you in the direction. Yeah, absolutely. I think British wrestling is the first before we get to Luke. British wrestling is the first wrestling I formally covered. Believe it or not. I know you're thinking, wow, that's kind of interesting, right? I'm from New York. And my first actual wrestling coverage I had was over 4 years ago during COVID with RP Davis. It was because I was a part of a British radio station at the time, Sportnarium. And, RP Davis was interviewed. He was a boxer like you, boxing champion turned at the time he was on his journey to be an indie wrestler, and the owner of the station's like, I think you have a good voice. I think you know a little bit about wrestling. Talk to this guy, and the rest is history. So yeah, I mean, British wrestling holds a soft spot in my heart, and it's still in my arsenal to this day. So we could definitely talk about that off the air. Luke, I could ask you about 100 different things, but I'm going to ask you. I mean, I hope that you'll talk about this project when it takes place. I'd be very fascinated what Dean thinks about this now. And I mean, is there anything that you want to talk about here that we haven't covered, and what's the next project is, or what this one here with wrestling, what'll even be like that time you step out in the ring, and anything else you want to share with us before we get to closing thoughts?
Yeah, just keep an eye out for this documentary. This one's going to take all efforts. But professional wrestling it's not into it's not ballet, as they say. It's very
Yeah,
tough.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
there's been some scary stories there around wrestling in the past, and this is going to take each and like all of my efforts to obviously to get fit, to get in shape, and to have a good match in there as well. So just keep an eye out. Hopefully, we can keep an eye out for an opponent, and any updates I can bring your way to Sportswire.
Yes,
And
please.
thank you for the Hall of Fame award again.
Yes.
I just want to show you this, Mr. Bryce.
Oh, yeah, yeah, sure.
This is how important that the other one is. I got it right there on me my
Oh,
shelf.
I
I can
see it.
see
Yes, I
that.
do see it. Wow. You know what? You're like, I would say about a quarter of the inductees actually have done that. About a quarter, actually, which is pretty good. I'd say about 25 or 30 of the Hall of Famers so far, have done that. And Savio Vega's
Yeah,
in the Hall of Fame. So that's
he is. Yeah.
he's in there. So it's it's a great journey. And of course, Dean was number 2, and Dean's in there, and it's great. I'm excited, and maybe you'll do more TikToks. I see you're doing TikTok now. I'm like, wait a minute, it's Luke Leyland. It's you and the Tribal Teams. I'm like, wait a minute, when are they doing a TikTok together? I'm sure we'll talk about that. But no, great stuff, and thank you for all that you do. You definitely deserved to be in the Hall of Fame again. I wanted you to catch up to Anthony Steele in Hall of Fame appearances. That's a guy, David, that if you talk to him, he'll talk to you probably like for a year. Maybe we'll talk about that off the air, but let's give you guys both closing thoughts. You have plenty to get to in your own lives, and I'm so honored you guys gave me an opportunity to speak with you once again. So, David, I'm going to pass the baton to you, give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? The floor is yours.
Just keep on the Instagram. We're going to be filming over the year. It's going to take a long time. We're hoping to end it around December. Okay. So we're looking to get some Big Daddy and Giant Haystack lookalikes in.
Well, the Tribal Cheese. Definitely got to talk to the Tribal Cheese.
Keep an eye out, because it's going to be fun. And if there's any fans on here from over our end that would like to get involved, come along while we're filming, you can do so.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that off the air, because I probably, although unfortunately I can't be there in person, I'm sure I can definitely point to you with some people and do that. So thank you, David, for that. And this was a lot of fun. And Luke, I'm going to pass the baton to you. Hopefully the next appearance, we won't have to wait a year from you on, but at least, it's guys like you and the Tribal Cheese that when you're on here, it means something. Some people come on here and they're here like every day, but at least you come on and you give us a reason. So not to quote the Hoobastank song, The Reason, but you have definitely given us the reason. Yeah, it was kind of came in my mind, but I want to pass the baton to you, give you some closing thoughts. Thank you for all that you do for us. Thank you for all that you do for the world. And I'm surprised you haven't won a Nobel Peace Prize. Maybe that'll change this year, but I'll pass the baton to you in the meantime. And any closing thoughts or anything else you want to share, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be back on Sportswire. It's my home away from home. I love Sportswire. I'm always going to be a fan of it. And I've seen a lot of interviews. Obviously, with being a fan, I watch a lot of Sportswire interviews and things like that. And I see a lot of the younger ones now coming in, and they're just made up to be on the platform. And I really want to get out there to them and say, keep doing what you're doing. You're just going to get people being negative towards you and towards what you're doing, but that just means that you're doing well. And just keep following what you want to do. There's a great quote, and I always use it when I'm thinking about certain things, and it's our destiny is not written for us, it's written by us. So keep doing what you're doing, all the past, present, and future people of Sportswire, definitely.
Yeah, it's you know what I always believe that you control your own fate, and there's no question that yeah we've got it's such an interesting mix on here because yes we've had Rhino, Savio Vega, Dean's been here, RPD we've had on Stud Bronson who's a big pro wrestler here, Vito Fratelli who was in the PWI 500, but then we get the backyard guys, then we get now the promo wrestlers, and you get the in betweeners, the undergrounder, the independent wrestler, and then you get athletes. So it's such a fascinating platform, which I think is why people for whatever reason want to tune in. Certainly not for my mutton chops, not for my long hair. It's for the people itself. And one more time before we go, that's David's YouTube page. You can find out more about Forged in Stone, future projects coming up. Instagram, that's David's info. Luke's Instagram is right there. Check all of that out. Fellas, I thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to have you guys back on later in the year to talk more about the project. I'll definitely talk to you guys off the air about connecting you to a couple of people. And I look forward to what's to come. And congratulations on the success and keep up the great work.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
thank you.
All right, that was David Harte, director of the Forged in Stone, also working with Luke Leyland on another project upcoming. And of course, Luke was the star of the Forged in Stone Armored MMA project, and he's documenting his return to the wrestling ring. He was also a part of the award-winning Dan Battore Kudawa film, which we saw in the Toronto Film Festival, and also AFREF, and you'll see him do a lot of great things. He's the first person to have competed in Dambe, the African Warriors Fighting Championships, also back in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame for a second time. And he is the man that has the most viewed video on any of the Sportswire Radio videos on our YouTube channel. It is great to have him back. It is an honor. And you can catch Luke also on TikTok. He'll probably do TikTok lives more than he's here, but that's okay. We won't hold it against him. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice figuratively and literally where all wrestling matters. If you're on Sportswire Radio, I'll be back here 9 o'clock Eastern time with James Taylor, the owner of ROEW. Speaking of guys that'll have stories, but he'll have plenty of them, and I hope you tune in for it. But yeah, give the gang a follow. Follow this, give us a like, and I'll see you soon here on Sportswire Radio at 9 o'clock Eastern time. But until then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on the number one global radio station. It is Sportswire Radio, where all sports matters and all wrestling matters. And Zilla got the last word for a change. Congratulations. Yes, we agree. Thank you. I'll